the Fill the Funnel podcast with Jeff Swan
and Tom Slocum.
We're here to help you crush your targets
with tactical tips and insights you can act on today.
Don't have a fancy tech stack, a big budget, or even a huge team to lean on?
Well, it's time to get that solved today with FTF Fridays.
Progress.
Welcome to another episode of Fill the Funnel with your host, Tom Slocum, and my amazing co-host, Jeff Swan.
What up?
We've been talking for a couple weeks now. This is episode 26, and we really wanted to dive into something that really even started this podcast in the first place, kind of what we've seen in the marketplace, which is where do you start when you get into building an outbound engine? How do you do that? How do you know, with all the noise that's out there, all the influencers, everything that's going on, what tools, what processes, what strategies do you go to market with? And how do you do all of that in an effective way where you get product adoption from your new reps, you have all the leadership on the same vision. There's a lot of things that tie into it. And so Jeff and I thought it'd be great to just talk about Go Engine Go. How do you do it? What works? There's so much you can do, so many resources, so much methodology to really make it happen. So Jeff, what have you seen when people are building an outbound engine, and getting into sales development or ADR, BDR, whatever it may be? What's like the biggest hiccup right off the bat that you've seen people typically fail first hard at?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Tom. There's so much to cover in outbound, in sales, in whatever. But the number one thing that I see as the biggest hiccup is that people don't have their messaging down. So the majority of people are out there selling based on what's important to them, how cool they are, all this other stuff, and all their accolades, but they're not recognizing that they're talking to actually human beings. They're talking to people. And so what happens is their messaging ends up sounding almost like an advertisement as opposed to you're talking to a human. So like you and I, Tom, we talk like human beings all the time. Like I say, hey, what's up? How was your weekend? Tell me about that workout you did. We talk in a casual, what one of our customers calls beer tone.
Yeah.
Right? We talk in that beer tone. But older sales training all teaches people how to sell in an email, in a cold call, or whatever else. So the number one thing, there's actually three things that a new outbound sales team needs to follow. There's messaging, there's your approach, and there's benchmarking performance. And so that first one, again, is messaging. If you literally sit there and focus your entire time on just trying to get the right message that actually captures attention of your audience, and when you make that first cold call, that that first line that really captures their attention, when you send out that email, the first line that makes people understand this is what the email is about, if you spend literally like 70% of your time on just that and that alone, it doesn't matter if you're doing everything manually. It doesn't matter if you're doing multi-channel, this and that. If you get your messaging down, like most of the battle is already won.
It really does come down to messaging, right? Too many people, start an outbound engine and don't even have that. They don't. They think that the SDR should own that, or the BDR or the ADR, and they just are like, here's some product training. Here's an idea of what we're trying to do. Go do it. Get us some meetings. And you're like, whoa, like, wait a minute. I can't just do that. Like, people assume you just go right into it and pick up a phone and book a meeting. And there's so much to it. And you're right. The way that we're messaging falls into a marketer too much, because that's what they know. They know the ads, the click buttons, and all the different things. They don't know how to actually just talk to a prospect and relay a message of, this is what we solve, this is why we solve it, this is how I'm relevant to you, and also here's what I know about you. Like, do a little bit of heavy lifting. It takes, we had an episode 14, 13, I don't know, the 5-minute limit, right? Where we talk about this, is that find that relevancy, find out why you're reaching out, and empower your outbound engine to know, encourage them. And it comes down to confidence in your messaging. When you can understand the ins and outs of your entire product that you're trying to go to market with, teach your reps that, teach your leadership that, so that way when they do pick up the phone, they know exactly what to say. They're very confident in it, and have that beer tone. One of our reps in Revly kills it, slays it, and it's simply because of that tonality and deliverability. It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yes.
It's just really what it comes down to, especially in email. You can't convey sarcasm. You have a hard time conveying certain tones in email. But on cold calling your messaging, call your friend. Hey, Jeff, it's Tom over at Milestone. How have you been? What's been going on?
Yep.
Just have a nice conversation. Check in with them after a holiday weekend. Be normal, but also don't waste their time. So I agree with you that messaging by far is probably where everything gets bundled up and plugged up, and you're not going to get success right out the gate.
Exactly.
What about the approach? So, you talk about approach a lot and the way that you go to market. So we've got messaging, right? Pay attention, be friendly, be normal, be relevant, and actually know your product inside and out. Partner with the CSMs, the leadership, learn it. What about approach? Where do you dive in there?
Okay, so the next, now that you got your messaging, the next is actually talking about, so what are the channels that you're going to run? What are the channels that you're going to be an expert in, right? Are you going to use email and phone, which are the most common? Are you going to tap into social, like a business-oriented social network like LinkedIn? Or are you going to tap into things like you and I were discussing the other day about Instagram and thinking, okay, like Instagram, there's a treasure trove of opportunity in there. You just have to understand how to do it. And again, going back to the messaging, it's, do I do Instagram as a business? Do I do Instagram as a person? Sharing stories about my personality, like whatever else, like my family, all that other stuff. So there's so many different aspects of outbound prospecting that are required to be successful. And you don't know if you need to do purely outbound, purely inbound, a combination of the two. And you don't understand when you're just starting out how to actually tackle each of those channels individually, how to tackle them together in a coordinated effort, which we call a sequence, right? How do you, when do you ask for that LinkedIn connection? At what point? At what stage, right? Do you send an email first before you call? Do you call before you email, right? All of these things put together combine to identify your actual approach that is successful. Right. And so the way that the best teams that I've worked with do this is they start with a baseline and they say, my hypothesis is that if I use email, phone, and LinkedIn, my audience is going to respond to my outbound. I'm going to get a lot of responses, have a lot of conversations, and I'm going to book meetings. And what you do is you set with that hypothesis, you incorporate your good messaging that you've already built, you incorporate that into a sequence that incorporates each of those touches, okay? And then you set it up. And you do it with, let's say, 100 to 300 prospects, exactly how it is. And you see, am I getting responses? What are the responses I'm getting, right? Am I getting, hey, I'm all set, like, leave me alone, take me off your list? Or are you getting, you know what, I love what you're doing, it's just not a good time for me to do that, right? Like, and then optimize until you get better. So every 2 weeks, this is how we recommend doing it with clients, is that every 2 weeks is run a test, a specific test. I don't like to do a lot of variables. I don't like to do a lot of different things. Don't test subject line, channels, messaging, and all these things all at the same time. Try to test one or two things per cohort, per 2 weeks sprint, and just write down the knowledge, write down what you're learning, and keep improving your approach. So every 2 weeks, you're going to have an improved approach and an improved approach. And over time, after you're getting 1% better every 2 weeks, you're going to eventually have a point where you're going to be crushing it with your outbound approach with that awesome messaging.
I love it. I've built and scaled a few teams, right? And it definitely nail on the head, right? Is you've got to figure out where your audience lives and execute that. And honestly, find out your cadence, find out what you're going to do. And too many leaders or, CEOs and founders try to build this element into their organization. And unfortunately, they're so out of touch with it. They don't get it. It's not their realm. It's not their world. They're going off of what other LinkedIn people say or this big major article. And honestly, there is no right size that fits all. in my opinion. I've built a few different teams, and every single one of them kind of had a different roadmap. Now, there is some consistency in certain things, but everyone had a different approach, in different ways, because your audience lives differently. So some aren't on LinkedIn. Some prospects you might go after, you can't even add social because they just don't, that's not where they live. So why even look at that channel? You're just going to waste your SDR's time, because at the end of the day, what you want to do within your approach is maximize the, let's say, 6 hours a day that you get from a BDR, SDR, right? Minus the lunch and dibble dabbling here and there, you get about a good 6 hours. So how do you maximize that approach? How do you get them pulling the channels that work? How do you get them performing and hitting this realistic benchmark that you have in order to do that? Because you can tell them the what. Hey, I need this many meetings booked. We're trying to hit this revenue goal. I'm hiring you to do this. And then you just let them off into the races. And you don't teach them the what or the how to get there.
Yeah.
Right? You don't teach them, okay, here's a cadence that we have. Okay. Yep. And what's so hard about this is, unfortunately, these SDRs get roped into these companies and are expected to teach the leaders this stuff because they don't even know what's going to work yet. They're just like, we need to go to market. We need to get this going. We need to be building pipeline, but they have no idea how to do it. And they're putting it all on the shoulders of this BDR or SDR, wrapping it up in this player coach kind of mentality. And then next thing you know, they're building out the engine themselves and getting paid $50,000 a year, but they're doing all the lifting for this company because they're like, well, you do it. We trust you. You know what you're doing. You go do it. And then they're just shooting in the dark. So you have to really work backwards and really understand your benchmarks. Maybe look at some data, Topo, some of those out there that give you that data, find out what's happening in the market, and then work backwards and pull those levers and empower your reps to know exactly what to do, and then let them play with that. And every 2-3 weeks, when I started at Milestone, right, that's what we did for 3-4 months. We had to work backwards, really figure out things. And I had to pull so many different levers. I had to find out if cold calling was going to work, what kind of email messaging was going to hit, and could LinkedIn be something we could use, right? Were there prospects over there that we could connect with and build a relationship with? So all about, you've got the messaging, you know how to message, you're going to create some really good templates there. Now you've got this cadence, you've got these channels you're going to pull, you know how many touches you're going to do. And a lot of times these leaders build very small cadences. I know you've had experience with this for years. People bring you sequence reviews all the time, and they stop at 6-7 touches?
Some stop at 3. Some stop straight up. Some stop at 3, man. I had a sequence at, I think you might have been on it, but sequence practice, I actually had a sequence that was 2. Yeah. 2 touches.
Yeah. And they were expecting to win, right?
Yeah.
And we just had a Rev Leader post today. They booked somebody off of a January sequence, and it was still running. It's July, and he still had a nurture, and he got a deal out of it, right? Because the longer there, I think we talked about this recently too, you and I offline or somewhere, is that why does a cadence even have an endpoint? Why are you even stopping it, right? Build a sequence that takes care of your whole year. Every 3 weeks, every couple weeks, you do a whole valley of, okay, your first 3 touches are pretty aggressive, 2 days, 2 days, 3 days, and then you go a month or 3 weeks without touching them. Then you pump it up again. Then you go down again, and you create this valley of high and low throughout your entire sequence. And as you're prospecting starting in January, or let's say right now, right? Build a sequence that'll last you through the rest of the year for your outbound engine, for your team. Have your manager, your leader, your director go hire a company like Jeff and I, right? We put something together and it runs for the whole end of year. And then as your SDRs are prospecting, they're just dropping them in as many as they can in the month of July. Just go. Drop as many people as you could touch a day, because an average SDR should be able to touch 50 to 100 people a day. I don't care. Y'all can come at me in the comments, but I think you should be able to call 100 people a day with no problem. You have 6 hours, man. 20 dials an hour is 100 or 120, right? So, and you're not talking to a lot of people. 80% of the time it's a voicemail, right? So you're not even don't tell me you're talking to 5 people every hour and having these amazing conversations, because you're not. You should be able to hit 100 people. So that's 500 people in a week on a high note. Let's call it 300. And you're dropping them in the sequence all through July. And from August to on, they're going through valleys. You're turning up the faucet and then you're turning it down. You're turning it up, you're turning it down, and you just let it run for the rest of the year. And I guarantee you, with that approach and with some personalized messaging in there, because you're going to have some manual touches, right? If you have the right tech stack, and we'll talk about that in a future episode, right? If you got the right tech stack, you should have a very good approach. So now let's talk about benchmarks, right? We talked about this, right? We got the messaging. We talked about some approach.
Yeah.
How do you design and how do you explore benchmarks? Because we know a lot of reps right now that have been given goals that when we go talk to them and dive into some of them on one-on-ones and just helping them on the side, they're like, man, I don't think you'll ever hit that goal. I don't think they mapped it out right. You know, I don't think that's achievable given what you've said. And obviously 3 months you've done nothing. So let's finish on there. How do you benchmark now when you're building out your engine?
Okay, so here like we said in the roundtable this week is that the thing that you need to recognize when you're just starting out, you have no idea. Actually, Evan Patterson said this in our thing. He said, "Yeah, sure, I booked 46 meetings in a month, but is that good? We don't know yet." Right? We don't know if that's good. So trying to choose some arbitrary number based on a report that you got online, it's not going to be helpful. What you want to do is go out there. And again, once you're testing your messaging, you're testing your approach, you want to find your benchmarks. Okay. So at the early stages, and this might not be popular, but at the early stages, when you don't know the outcomes, I do advise working on activities. So Tom, you mentioned a good SDR should be able to do 120 calls a day.
Yeah.
Right? That's 3 minutes a call, 6 hours prospecting, 3 minutes a call. You can absolutely do that, even if you're having conversations within that time, right? So when you're looking at it, benchmark starting by doing the activities. I'm trying to get out to do as many emails, phone calls, and social messages as I can over the next whatever time. I'm going to have as many conversations as possible. And I'm going to bring back a little tidbit, a jewel of information you had in a couple episodes ago, where take every single call, every single conversation as a way to learn something new.
Yeah.
Right? And learn, is my messaging good? Is my approach good? Is our hypothesis of what we think our product does for people going to work? Are the problems we solving important enough that they want to pay money to do it? And learn and learn and learn. And what'll happen over the next 30, 60, 90 days is that you'll start booking meetings that turn into sales, that turn into opportunities, that start to turn into things that allow you to set that information back, right? To get that information back and understand, okay, now I know it's going to take me 100 calls a day to get 2 conversations, right? Yeah. It's going to take me 10 conversations to get 3 meetings. It's going to take me 3 meetings to get 2 opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And then you start writing those down. And again, over 30, 60, 90 days, you should have a good idea of how many calls you need to make, how many conversations you need to have in order to actually generate revenue to make the whole thing worthwhile.
Right. Reverse engineering, failing hard and fast in that first 90 days as you get your SDRs. And honestly, my last tidbit for you is you do the job. Yes. I did that, right? Like when I build and scale my teams before I get the SDRs in here, I'm doing the job so that I can understand those benchmarks and learn them, right? Like, so I understand them. So I love that we talked about this today. I hope you all learned a lot here. When you're building an engine and you're trying to get into this world, set these SDRs up for success. That's your ultimate job. They're going to be your engine. They're going to be the ones getting you business and keeping you fed. Set them up. Make sure your messaging's tight. You've got a solid approach. You know exactly what channels are going to be most effective. And then start falling and failing hard. Really hope you enjoyed this episode. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks again for coming by.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Fill the Funnel podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite platform, give us reviews, and tell all your friends about us. Till next time, happy hunting.